been across the nation in a lot of these different licenses across the supply chain. And really, I still have never felt the type of community that I have felt in California, specifically Northern California and the Emerald Triangle. It's just such, it's an experience. It's a life-changing experience that I feel anyone that is very truly passionate about cannabis should be able to experience in their lifetime, because there's no other word for it but life-changing. I mean, the first time I ever went to a cannabis farm out in Northern California, I was grateful. I couldn't believe it. I went to 3 different small farms in one day, and I got to see, them growing their other herbs and their veggies right alongside their cannabis plants, and their little toddlers running through and like grabbing the leaves and smelling their fingers. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. And with that being said, California is going through a lot of struggles right now. There's a lot of things happening where farms are not even putting plants in the ground this year, and they're putting liens on their homes, because a lot of people might not know this, but their homestead is a homestead. They have their cannabis plants, their veggie garden, and their homes all there on the same plot of land. Well, technically it's not like the same plot because they have to section it out, but their homes are right there next to their hoop houses and their outdoor plants. And so do you mind giving us a little high-level overview? I know this could be a huge tangent in itself about what's happening in California, what's happening with these tax cuts, and like, why is this all happening, and how can others make an impact and really help move the California industry forward?
Yeah, so we are definitely facing some unique challenges. Whether it starts at the beginning in our verticals, to be quite honest, in cultivation. And at this point, right now, cultivation taxes is pretty high, depending on how you harvest. But for the most part, everybody does a fresh plant, which really does impact. And throughout the supply chain, what happens is majority of the time the cultivation tax is usually passed on, and it goes all the way through and carried to distribution, where it's passed on to the retailer in that sense. But the supply chain ends up being dependent on one another here in California. This is why our system is not really the greatest. And there's a lot of pressure put into distribution to collect and maintain and report taxes. And then what is also from the retailer as well. So this has actually created a really crazy burden, and we're talking about like millions of dollars that is being put into taxes in regards to cannabis, whether it's on the cultivation side or it's all the way to the consumer side. And then the other thing that impacts this, and this is a huge, huge issue here, is our social equity program. And we have very many social equity based operators that have been in their submission with their applications from day one, since here in California it was allowed. They're still not fully operational, and they're not fully approved. So first and foremost, if there was anything that should be reformed, it should be our social equity programs. And this is mainly at a local level, even though the state is collecting the taxes, the impacts, it starts at the local and it goes into the state level. The taxes that come with that for social equity is just astronomical. And there's I mean, when you think about like in any other industry with like a nonprofit, in some sense, not to say that social equity is a nonprofit, but it's not taxed the same as other businesses. Social equity should not be taxed the same as other businesses. This is the reason why we've created a social equity program, because this is individuals who have been afflicted in some way by the war on drugs. And in my brain, I'm just like, how can you ask these individuals to mount themselves up to the same level that you're asking a regular business, So just that in itself is big enough. Now, secondly, the second issue that a lot of us are facing here is a lot of local bottlenecks. So, our grandiose region being the Emerald Triangle, Trinity, Mendocino, and Humboldt County, the cannabis programs are having a lot of difficulties getting their applicants through the process and approved. We have a lot of interesting CEQA, which is, it deals with water, basically, is what, and the land watershed that comes in your certain areas that you happen to be cultivating in. So there's a lot of local issues that you face. If you're in Mendocino and Humboldt, they're all over you on this stuff. As of recent, right now, Mendocino County is dealing with what they're calling vegetation modification citations that they're issuing, which is basically tree removal. And they, if you don't have any proof of a tree removal, in some sense, from almost 10, 12 years ago, you'll be cited. And so which is really kind of interesting. It gets into a lot of other stuff too, because it's like, you have active, nature, trees just fall. How are you going to prove that from 12, 15 years ago? So it's really quite interesting how, like, we have a state program. You have all of these provisionals for these operators who are holding onto a state license. They were able to get that because of our period that we had here in California to grant provisionals while you're going through your local approval. Local approvals have not finalized their programs yet. So you're faced with a lot of problems. And Mendocino and Humboldt, Trinity have been some of the most difficult. Humboldt is actually, their reform on their program is finally coming through. It's a slow process, but it's happening. Mendocino County has, it depends on like what type of program you're in, because they've had to change so many times that they have different phases now. And you have to qualify for a certain phase to get into that area. In the meantime, you got people who are, paying their mortgages, their leases on properties. They're still paying all the utilities. They're still paying their employees. They're still trying to do all of these things and keep it afloat, while you have local agencies that are looming and threatening to shut you down because of certain things that, you really, it's going to take you another $500,000 to get a professional to come out and to look at the property and to do, your grading and your slopes, and a professional to come out and to look at the property and to do, your grading and your slopes. And it's astronomical. I mean, it really is. And I can't imagine. I mean, I haven't worked in a lot of industries, but when I think about other facets of ag, like, these kind of things don't come up. I mean, they really don't. And it's just, I'm blown away. I mean, I really am. I bang my head up against the wall every day, it seems like, because I'm having the same questions and the same conversations with local officials and trying to see what is happening with this and why is this being delayed. Local social equity programs are also a problem as well, too. They haven't been established. They've done the reviews, but they haven't had anything actually roll out yet. The state assigned money, and so that money is just going to sit there. And there's some local agencies that haven't taken it because they haven't developed a program yet. So who knows when the actual money support would come through for some of these guys. So yes, I have a few clients that are literally camping on their cultivation sites because they just sold the house. They just sold the trucks. They're trying to hold on because they've invested so much over the last 7 to 8 years that they can't let go. It would just be too hard for them. So they're trying to hold on. The future is unpredictable. We don't know how long it'll take. It's kind of interesting too. I had a client that in Mendocino County all of a sudden just pop up for the review for their phase 2 application, but I have someone who submitted at the same time and nobody's even touched it yet. So like I don't know how it's working. You can tell staff is short in these places when you call, you're trying to get a hold of people. Like it's compounded upon compounded issues is really what it is. So, but we have some great things going on with the primaries. And so we have some bills that we're trying to pass here in California in regards to tax reform. If anything, we need an emergency reform. I mean, it has to happen now. It can't be something planned out for next year. And I think more than anything, that's the kind of answers that in California, we're kind of, as operators, we're kind of looking for is, what can we do now while you guys are fixing this? Like, it's great that we've got all these people that are working in there and we're submitting our letters to our local assembly members and legislation. We're constantly begging them and knocking on their doors and ringing their phones and letting them know that this is killing us. But there's a lot of us that are sitting here going, okay, well, what can I do now? Because, like, I don't know if I can keep my store open for the next week. Like, I just finished payroll. You know, I get these questions as well, too. So, you know, we kind of like turn to each other for a lot of these kind of interesting things. And I think that's why I kind of started my page on, it's another extension of my business, but it's this Can We Talk California. And it's kind of like this little community thing that I'm trying to build right now of us trying to share ideas with one another to try and keep ourselves going in the now while the reform is being taken place. You know, they're going to rewrite these bills, and something that we can do for each other. And, you know, honestly, like, I walk into a manufacturer and it's been sitting there forever. They're still going through local approval. They don't have their occupancy yet, but they're still paying lease. And all of these other fees on top of it. So, hey, let's figure out a way to use this space so you can make money for right now. It's just in a retailer, they're trying to figure out how to maximize their space, and they're thinking that, they got to expand and put all this money into this stuff. Well, first, hey, let's do an audit of your inventory. Let's see what's going on, and how you're selling things. Let's find out your first in, first out. Are you guys are you guys doing your cycle counts? Let's see where your deficits are and where you're suffering, and those kind of things. So it's anything that can work right now. I'm just there to have the conversations and to hopefully perpetuate some kind of change and some kind of help for these operators while they're here now. And then share the stories, because that's the other thing too. I don't think a lot of operators understand that they're not alone. Like, I know it feels lonely out there because none of these agencies are calling you back. I mean, you're blowing their phones up constantly. You're going down to the counters at the local, agency and asking for help. Like, nobody's getting back to you. And when you open up the doors to kind of like have the conversations with other people and have them share their stories, other people know that they're not alone. And it's scary, with this business and this industry and not knowing if your people are going to be able to come in the next day and stuff like that. So that was my intention behind it.